welcome to the Museum of Howard County History. If you haven't been here before, welcome. If you haven't been here in a while, welcome back. My name is Mark Stout. I'm the Executive Director of the Howard County Historical Society. I want to welcome everyone for this special event. I want to thank first our partners, and there are many. In addition to the Historical Society, Ed Lilly, where's Ed? There he is. He's in the back. Howard County Government, Visit Howard County, Ellicott City Partnership, quilt artist Rose Cohen, and Steve Miller, Cummings and Company Realtor. Also note the event is sponsored by Casco Heritage Green. Used to yet or haven't seen it. And with that, I'll introduce our host tonight. So Steve Miller is a local realtor. He's also from Howard County, from this area. I know you probably have seen him before. He does a lot of this kind of work. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve for our program.
So good evening. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate and honor the memories of Lower Main Street. As Mark said, I am your MC for the evening, Steve Miller. Some of you may remember me as the 17th best bartender on Main Street. My years slinging drinks at Portales. And some of you may have had the fortune, good or bad, to have a drink with me at Phoenix and Cocoa Lane and some of our other establishments around town. Regardless, on behalf of everyone that knows and loves historic Ellicott City, again, thank you for coming this evening. Mark did thank everybody that I was going to thank, so I'll run through that list one more time because I put it in here, and I have to, just like Ron Burgundy that's in my teleprompter, I have to read it. Absolutely. On behalf of everyone, recognizing the sponsors and supporters of this evening in no particular order, of course, Historic Ellicott City Incorporated, the Howard County Historic Society, the Tapsco Heritage Greenway, AIC, and Ellicott City's own Ed Lilly. I'd also like to dispel a pernicious rumor about Ed's age once and for all. Yes, Ed has been in Ellicott City a very long time, but contrary to popular belief, he did not tell the Ellicott brothers that this would be a good spot for a town. I do have it on good account that he did tell them it might be a good spot for a gristmill. Also like to recognize and thank the Ellicott City Partnership and Howard County Office of Tourism for their assistance in promoting this event. The purpose of this evening tonight is for us to come together to share the stories, the memories, and reminisce on what it was that endeared this little town and its main street to so many of us. And to give both the Howard County Historic Society and Historic Ellicott City the opportunity to preserve the oral history of this town. Now we know the official and formal written history of properties, buildings, businesses, and so on, but the individual stories are what matters. The impact of the events on the people here and how they interpret them is paramount. Now, retelling of the history orally is a tradition as old as man. Long before written word was even a thing, our ancient ancestors told tales of their great heroes, their adventures, victories and defeats, of the weather, crop yields, good and bad, gods and goddesses, and what it was they believed in and saw as the truth. These stories were preserved by trusted members of society and everyday people by being told and retold endlessly in each subsequent generation so that they too would know where they came from. Eventually those stories made it to paper, but not for hundreds, if not thousands of years after those stories were first told. I had marked my pages with numbers. And if I make it through this without dropping it, it'll be a miracle. Much of what we know from the ancient world descends from these oral histories, and this isn't just an ancient tool. We as modern humans use oral histories to describe what it was they were thinking and doing when a major event occurred and how it impacted us. In that vein, plenty of people here could tell you where they were when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, the Challenger blew up, or 9/11. In an interview with the person is a form of an oral history. The historian and journalist Stutz Terkel interviewed countless famous and not so famous people on his radio program for over 4 decades. And he asked them everything and anything to get the full picture of what was really going on at that time from their perspective. He's also recognized for his written account of the oral history of World War II called The Good Book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. That's a collection of interviews with men and women who were actually there, in their own words, from their perspectives. So, this evening we carry on this ancient tradition. We have a number of speakers this evening who have intimate connections to historic Ellicott City, and especially Lower Main. You'll hear from them, their experiences, their emotions, and their feelings. You'll hear their truth this evening. You will hear their perspectives. I ask that you consider everyone's perspective, even if it challenges your own. This is how we learn about each other, and this is how we build stronger bonds as a community. That being said, AAIC has prepared a retrospective video of Old Ellicott City.
Hello, everyone. I'm Len Berkowitz.
And I'm Sherry Stout.
And we started in January 1st, 1980 on Main Street at 8133. And
We own Great Panes Art Glass Studio.
Yep.
Go ahead.
All right, the first project that we did in Ellicott City was to do the transom at 8133, and I believe it is still there. We've also done quite a few other projects in Ellicott City. We've done the second floor glue chip windows that are on the second floor of the train station. We've also done major restoration and repair work for Emory Church, which is just around the corner on Church Street. We've also done work for Chez Fernan, Tersigels, actually, and we also did work for Aldo Batiste. And then we moved down to 8069 Main Street, one of the buildings that was removed recently. And that's about it for that part of it. Let's see. In our experiences of Ellicott City, when we first came to town, there was a lot of mentors in town. There were people who had been there for many years. Of course, I did say Fernand Tersigel. There was Annalie and Roland Bounds. There was Sam and Gertrude Kaplan. And there was several, Piney Ross and Lou Bennett were also, they had a dress shop in town. So basically, the community was a very close-knit business community, mainly between Columbia Pike and the river. And in 1984, I was one of the original signers of the Articles of Incorporation of the Ellicott City Business Association. I was also the first vice president. And after the fire in 1984 that was in the middle of town, just above the Commercial and Farmers Bank, I became the president because Roger Moreno was burned out. So there have been several occasions where I decided to be involved with the Ellicott City Business Association, actually president 3 times during my administration, or my years in Ellicott City. Also, Bruce Taylor was an important factor to all of the people in town. While I was president of the Business Association, he actually was also on the board and became a sponsor that financed a 1890s small bus that was used to transport people around town and also pick up from the courthouse parking lot. Historically, there have been many, many incidents of disasters in town. Obviously, the ones that everybody immediately thinks of is the 2 floods of 2016 and 2018. But before that, in 1984, when the fire occurred at the middle of Main Street, the fire department took 20 minutes to get down to Main Street, and the fire station was just up the road. Also, at that time, there was a fire alarm box right outside my store at 8133, and about a month after that fire, it was scheduled to be removed and was removed. So I don't know whether it would have been faster for them to come down by a phone call or that fire box, alarm box. And we've had several other incidents. There was a time where 7 fires were started by someone on Main Street that was, I'm not sure who he was, but he tried to start 7 fires. And also, what else, Sharon?
Well, I would say, I remember Ellicott City as kind of being like the Wild West town. We used to have horses come down the sidewalk. We had ghosts on roofs. And we had Roger and his sister. We were the terrors of town. Everybody kind of feared Roger. You'd get out in the middle of the street and holler and scream in the middle of the night. Well, many years later, we look out and there's a truck delivering beer to Al Parsons at Coca Lane. Lo and behold, there's Roger. Came over, introduced himself to us, was very friendly to us. And so to me, that's some of the fun things that I remember. I remember Baxter's. I remember the Blues Bar. And of course, Lottie's Bakery. Who could ever forget Lottie's Bakery? The original was just to die for. We'd come in on Sunday and go into the studio, and there'd be a line up the street of people just waiting to get into the bakery. There's a lot of really good memories.
Yeah, and also at that time, in the early part of 1980s, most of the residents lived on the second and third floors of all the buildings. There was not a lot of commercial development in the upper floors. It was all basically from Columbia Pike down to the train station.
You had an apartment in your building?
We had 2 apartments, so we had income for a residential area, and then we had the lower floor. What was that? After 2016 flood, Joan Eve moved into the front of our building, and we moved to the back only, and still worked and did custom work and restoration and repair. And the final project, as a matter of fact, that we did for Ellicott City was the restoration of all of the windows for the Historical Society up on the hill in the old Presbyterian Church. And that project was 45 windows, and every single window was restored to its beautiful brightness that it should be.
Any more specific things to your building?
To our building. Well, when Joan Eve moved in and we moved to the back of the building, they had already taken out all the cobblestones in the alleyway, which we were promised that the county was going to bring back someday. And all the school children would always come through town on their field trips, and they always walked through the alleyway. So we'd get to see the kids, and they'd get to look into the windows and see our classroom. But we had a studio that had tables in it, and we had full demonstrations daily as we were working on projects. And
We taught classes. For many years, we taught 3 nights a week. We had kids come in from the elementary schools as soon as the teachers found out that some of their students' grandparents owned a stained glass studio. The request was, can we bring the class in for a field trip when we come into Ellicott City? So we did a lot of educating. What else can you say?
Well, I would say, as a final note, I would like to say that Ellicott City was here before we came, and it's still here today, and it's still thriving. No matter what has happened over the years, and I believe over 30 floods, several fires, Ellicott City manages to survive no matter what. So I hope that the progress of the River Walk will just continue to bring in more people. But I do see that Ellicott City is flourishing, and it's given us everything that we ever wanted in our life. It gave us the opportunity to retire, still do a little bit of glass work, and be able to be very comfortable. And we're very thankful for that. Good luck in the future.
So, Len and Sherry are a very tough act to follow, to say the least. My own stories of Main Street and Lower Main Street at that are varied. My folks moved to Mount Hebron when I was just under 4 years old. I grew up in Ellicott City, went to church at St. Paul's. So Ellicott City has been a fundamental part of my life since I was very small. One of my first experiences when I was 17 years old was waiting tables at side streets down on Tiger Avenue, and long since gone. Later on, I moved on to the Ellicott Mills Brewing Company, where a young man by the name of Mark Hemmis was the general manager. And Mark fired me when I was 18 years old. We're still friends to this day because I was a dumb college student at the time, and he recognized that, and I didn't.
It's a my speech.
Yeah, figured as much. But years later, after determining that economics was probably not the right career path for me, I changed my trajectory and went back into the culinary world and went back to side streets in my early 20s. Started out as a line cook, became the sous chef. Eventually, I moved on to other restaurants, but there was a stopover at Siegal's for a bit, and some other spots around town. And, eventually I wound up coming back because, like everything, you tend to circle back to what you know. So after a number of years in the culinary world, I started to burn out cooking a little bit, and I called up the folks at Portales and said, I need a job. I've got a job, but I need another. I need to make more money. They gave me a job bartending, which was kind of like the fox guarding the hen house, but it is what it is. But prior to, and I eventually became the bar manager there, so I had the run of the show, which was a lot of fun, and those of you that came in on a frequent basis got to enjoy some of the frivolity that ensued. But prior to 16, managing the bar, outside of day-to-day operations, my life was relatively carefree in Ellicott City, except for the occasional train derailment, manure spill, or the ever-present semi getting stuck underneath the bridge. Our biggest controversies in town almost always revolved around parking. It was whether there were meters or not, and meter maid was being a little too attentive, perhaps. If somebody was taking over spots in Lot D for a farmer's market, or there was another festival that was coming to town, and obviously took up parking, and parking being at a premium and being a long-standing controversy in the town, these were usually very hotly debated, to say the least, both in real life and in social media. There's other memories too. Dave, Mim, and I pumped out Sally's basement during one of the previous storms. So when I actually got to find out that there was a basement in Sally's building, it was a little scary to be down there with the river rushing by and everything bouncing off the walls. That same storm, we pumped out Mark's basement, pumped out the basement of Portales, and then life got back to normal. But this actually brings me to one of my favorite stories of Ellicott City, and it took me a long time to kind of come to grips with the idea that I'd be standing in front of you telling you about this. And I met my partner in crime and the love of my life, Annie, at the Phoenix. And I can remember exactly what it was. I wrote it down, but I know the story because I've told her a bunch of times. And she unfortunately couldn't be here this evening because of work obligations. So what you're about to hear is true. It's definitely true. She may have some alternative, we'll say, addendum to the story. But I was a few months past a breakup, and I was hanging out with my best friend Maddie at the bar. And we would get together, he was a cook as well, and we would discuss what we were doing in the kitchen and the different techniques and the cookbooks we read, and the last bottle of wine, and how we're going to set the culinary world on fire. Where basically, as we would do, get together, have a couple of beers, and solve all the world's problems. I happened to take notice of this very attractive blonde at the end of the bar. I said to Maddie, she's pretty, I'm going to get her phone number. So Maddie and I walked down to the end of the bar. He struck up a conversation with her best friend Sabrina, and I started talking to Annie. And I could tell she was a little sarcastic, she was a little bit snarky, but it was very intriguing. And I'm trying as I can, best as possible, to create a banal conversation with somebody that I've just met. And she really wasn't having much of it. So I defaulted to my standard icebreaker, hey, you want to do a shot? And I expected some sort of fruity concoction, something that might very well elevate my blood sugar. And she lays Patrick over the bartender and goes, I have a shot of Jameson on his tab. Give him whatever he wants. I was flabbergasted. Absolutely floored and smitten, to say the least. The only downside is I didn't get her phone number that night. So every time we went back to the Phoenix, which was quite regular, as Mark can tell you, I definitely took up a lot of space there over the years, I would look for her. I wouldn't see her. So little did I know, she was doing the same thing. She would go to Phoenix randomly trying to see if I was there. So one day, I'm sitting in the bar, just got off work, and I'm wearing a shirt that says poop balls. Lowercase letters with a period on the end. A friend of mine made it, I thought it was funny. Annie walks in the bar with another girl. It was her sister. I had no idea it was meeting the family this evening, otherwise I would have dressed appropriately. However, her sister Lacey referred to me that evening almost entirely and subsequently as poop or poocher. To this day, we were in Vermont visiting them a couple of weeks ago. Lacey asked me, "You still have that poop shirt?" "Oh yeah, absolutely." So the funny thing is, though, which I have to go back on script for just a moment here. The next few years, Annie and I became thick as thieves. I would work every Sunday night for Tallies. She would come in after work. She'd sit there and have dinner and shoot the breeze with me. Then we'd wander over to Phoenix for the Sunday night hospitality night with all our friends. And my friends became her friends became mine. We became a thing. And we'd hang out at the Phoenix and we'd sing karaoke and we'd have a grand old time and it really was great. And every once in a while we'd wind up at one of our friends' apartments on Lower Main solving all the world's problems and that being said, as we know, things did change pretty dramatically in 2016. And in the aftermath of the 16 and 18 flood, I stood side by side back to back with many of you in the street, shoveling muck out of basements. It's what we did. The reality is we were trying to preserve what little was left after the floods. I helped organize with my friends and my now family, friends of the family you get to pick, right? We organized work crews and supply donations and stabilized structures and I made a lot of new friends and lost a couple. And I really held the friends that became my extended family that much closer. And there is something to say that adversity forges relationships. I know that many here have dealt with and continue to deal with the mental fallout from those events, and I'm in that with you. The reality is I put off on writing my thoughts down until right before this event. I had properly processed and grieve as well. We're still working our way through it, and we will continue to. And it's not a linear process, it happens. I'm not ashamed of it, and nobody should be really, ever at all. But at 16 and 18, we lost a major part of this all, and it wasn't just buildings and businesses, it was a monumental sea change to our way of life in Maine. And at 16, we hoped that we would return bigger, stronger, more resilient. In 18, the bitter reality did set in. And those buildings held so many memories for all of us. For me, I met Annie there. My 40th birthday, my surprise party, was in the second floor of the Phoenix, right before the world shut down in 2020, the last big bash. We had no idea it would be the last time we would be going to Phoenix. And we probably would have looked at it a little bit differently. To see the buildings finally come down, it really did break my heart, and I know it did for many of you. Every time I drive up Maryland, or up Main Street, hit the light of Maryland Avenue, I gaze out over what was there. The memories come back, and sometimes I laugh, and sometimes I sigh, and sometimes I cry, because that's just normal. It's a normal part of emotions, it's a normal part of grief. And through events, and even to this day, my lead picture on my business website is a shot of the intersection of Maryland Avenue and Main Street, and Phoenix all lit up at night. And that's the memory that I'm holding on to for the rest of my life. The building might be gone, but that memory is still here. And so events like tonight, we'll share our memories, we might laugh, we might cry, we'll preserve those memories for the future. Like I said, the buildings might be gone, but the memories are going to stay long after us. So that being said, as a matter of housekeeping, we're asking everybody try and keep it to about 5 minutes or so. We want to be able to let everybody have enough time to speak, kind of get through what it is that they'd like to share and say with everybody. And on that note, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Miss Sally Tennant. Sally. To say that Sally is an indomitable force is an understatement. I've known her a very long time, and she's known for many years discoveries.
Yeah. I think it's 44 at this point. Well, anyway, I was born and raised up on South St. John's Lane, which is, the Ellicott City area, and I was coming down from when the Agnes flood hit, coming down and taking some people back to our house. So I was very familiar with Ellicott City. But after I graduated college, I was a therapist at a psychiatric hospital off the street, up College Avenue, which some of you might remember Taylor Manor, which was bought out by Shepherd Pratt. So I had to go down Main Street, not Main Street, every day. And I knew a lot of great artists, like clay and different things like that. And it was beginning to get the bug that maybe I needed to work for myself instead of working for a company. And I decided, looking at that place is for rent and that place is for rent. And so I decided to take the plunge. And I figured, well, if I screw this up, I'll just go back to what I was doing. And so I figured, why not? So I rented, it's where Maryland and Maine come together. Lots of time is in there now. I had half of it. And it was tiny. You had to single file around a table, and that was about it. And at the time, another neighbor of mine that I grew up with had gotten drunk one night at the Phoenix and ran in and destroyed the storefront. So my neighbor went and rebuilt that. I moved in there for a couple of years. And I used to go over to Villa Market across the street from me, which is the building that I ended up buying. And I would go over there for, get something to eat, lunch or whatever. And one day, I heard that Ray, who owned Villa Market, died right at the cash register. And maybe I'll die one day in the cash register too. Won't be a bad way to go. But at that time, I'm thinking, my quarters were so cramped and my inventory was growing. It was like, okay, I thought, well, I don't know what Nikki wants to do. But eventually I went over there and I never mentioned it to her. I just, that's just a tack. But one day I went over there and she was just looking so bummed, so I don't want to be here kind of thing. And I said, Nikki, if you ever want out, just let me know because I need to expand. I said, no pressure or anything, just if you ever feel like it. So I left it at that, and she gave me a call and said, I need to sell. So that's how I got the building, which is in between where Dean Hollow was and Phoenix. And the interesting thing being, they had the deli section, a meat section and all that kind of refrigerated kitchen stuff. So I called up Taylor Manor, where I used to work, and I knew that they were expanding and needed another kitchen. So I called them and they came down, because I didn't want to haul all that stuff, those walk-in freezers and all that stuff. Mr. Fisher came down, he bought everything, all the equipment that was in there. And that was enough for the down payment for the building. Because I didn't have a whole lot of money right then. So that really helped him out, so he didn't have to spend a fortune on new equipment. And I was able to walk in and settle it. So I opened it, and my poor ex-husband and his manager of his shops came in and they built all the walls, put the wood on all the walls, built all the shelves and stuff. So I decided to open the business because at the time I knew the great artists, but they didn't have any place to sell. Like most pottery and stuff was kind of normal. Like I knew people would be crazy, elephant jaws, pick up their head, and that kind of crazy stuff. And I used to have my friends over and like a Tupperware party, you know what I mean? It was like a little pottery party. So I figured, I'll just experiment with this and see what happens. And this store was very successful. So after I moved in, I moved in there and lived in the apartment upstairs. So I took over both apartments and raised my kids there. And then in hindsight, after the floods and after the buildings were torn down, it was hard to lose the location of the business because I never envisioned that I would have to give it up, that I'd be gone. I worried about the Patapsco coming up, but it took me until like 2011 when we had the first flood. It didn't occur to me that we were going to have downhill flooding. So, but I regret and feel the saddest as far as the loss is that my kids can't go, this is where I grew up. You know what I mean? I don't know, it bothers me more than the store, which I relocated up on Upper Main. In the 2016 flood, well, we had the 2011, my whole basement flooded, and then 2016 hit, and I'm like, oh God. But then the most amazing thing happened is that I was feeling like despair, you know, and like, what do I do now? And this miracle happens of all these people. I had no clue who these people are, like Steve sitting back there in that little red shirt. People like him, and like people came out of nowhere to help. They had nothing to gain. They had no investment. And it was filthy. It was like so hot, no electricity, broken glass, mud up to here. I mean, it was awful. For those people to show up in my life and help, because I couldn't have done it. There's no way. I would have walked away because I knew I couldn't physically do it or emotionally. But when you have people that are complete strangers that have such big hearts that show up and help, I couldn't give up. I can't let them down. And so we rebuilt, and I feel so great that we rebuilt. So happy. It just really felt like an accomplishment. For the money, for the aggravation, for all the time, and the, you know, everything. So I was feeling proud. And I was proud of all the people and the new friends that I met. I mean, these are people that are going to be lifelong friends. And then when 2018 it happened again, it was like, oh crap. You know, these people, I felt bad for myself, but it was my investment, it was my building, it was my loss, it was my responsibility. But to know that those people showed up again, and even more, knowing that they had just basically thrown away, you know, half a year, I mean, doing the most grueling, disgusting work, that they showed up again. I mean, that truly is the silver lining that I will forever be grateful. It taught me a life lesson about perseverance that I needed to learn, that these kind of people that are miracles came into my life. So after 2018, I mean, that sucker took the wall, it took the floor. I mean, you could walk right inside the door, you look down and there's the river. It's like, and we had a little strip. It was like this, but we had a little strip. And I knew I could never go back in that building. That whatever the county had planned for the building, I knew it wouldn't happen quick enough for me to risk investing. I mean, it already took all my life savings. So I remember vividly, I lost my home, went to live with my son, who had just had his like bachelor pad on a house. You know what I mean? Really proud, and then his mother comes to move in. You know, I ruined everything. He had like 3 roommates and all this stuff. And he finally got rid of me. You know, just a couple months before it flooded again, I finally moved back in. And then, so he was like, we got along great. Even, you know, considering that your mother moves in with you, I mean, we made the best of it. And it was a very, very special memory that I have of our time together. So he just got rid of me, and then had to give him a phone call. Guess who's coming back? He's like, oh, okay, Mom. So I moved in with him, and I remember knowing that I could not go back in that building. Knowing that I spent out. I mean, I just invested everything in my life into coming back. So I didn't know if I had the money, I didn't know where, and I lost my home, I didn't know where I was going to live. So like there was like nothing. And I remember, luckily he had a pool. And I remember sitting in that floaty day after day going, don't think, because my thoughts were spinning. Like, there's so much uncertainty. I had my life, you know, before the first flood, I had it together. And then the second one is what did me in, you know, financially and otherwise. So I let my brain tell my brain to shut up, trust in God or karma or whatever it is that you have to trust when you don't really feel it. You had to try to just let it go and let whatever happens happen. So luckily it has a good ending. I love the house that I'm in. I was able to move up the street. Don't like paying rent, but you know what. But it's a good store, and you know the silver lining that I always think back and when I go by, like Steve goes by, I have different feelings. Like I almost get numb to them. Because what's the point of regret? You know, it is what it is. What it is. It's gone. And I just got to be happy with where I am now, the house I have now, my new little cat, and anybody who wants a kitten, let me know. I rescued a cat, she was pregnant. Didn't know that. And, you know, I'm good with the store where it is, and I'm still surviving. And though I looked at other places to move out of Ellicott City, afraid of what was going to happen again, I knew everything else got crossed off the list, and this is my home, and this is where I want to start my business, it's where I want to end my business. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Next up, we have Joan Eve Shea-Cohen. Joan Eve has been a fixture. She's been a fixture on Main Street for a very, very long time, so I'm very pleased to hand the microphone over to you.
And I'm also going to have my savior, my best friend, whoever saves your life is your best friend forever. Very well. First, I just want to tell you all, I am so happy to be back with my Ellicott City family. You have no idea what it was to have another family. It was wonderful, all the years. I mean, I'm 81 now, and I started in Ellicott City in February of 1996, and been here ever since. Nothing's getting me away from it. But anyway, I wanted to tell you briefly how I got started and why I got in this business. My family's all in retail, so it must be in there. But my girlfriend called me one day when I was at work. She said, Joni, do you want to go into Ellicott City with me? I want to sell my mother's some of her antiques. And I said, oh my God, I'd love to go. I haven't been to Ellicott City for years. So we went into Main Street, Ellicott City. She went into Maxine's, and I'm sure Charlene must have bought her mother's antiques. And then when she came out, we started walking up and down Main Street and looking at things and saying, ooh, I have that. Ooh, we could do this. So we went down to the Antique Depot on Maryland Avenue, and we had to really get John Loder back to give us a place. He wasn't too excited about giving us a booth. Well, we got a booth in the basement. We shared the rent, but we each had our own inventory numbers so that we didn't have any arguments about what went into the booth. Okay, so I was in Antique Depot for quite a long time, 1996 to 2001, and what happened was Arlene got out of it, my girlfriend Arlene Lee, and she got out of the business, and I had like, I don't know, 6 booths, 3 showcases. I mean, I could have owned the place. I mean, I had so many places. And my dear friend Sue Starr had a booth at the Antique Depot that I ended up taking over her spot because she moved up the street, Starry Night Antiques, if you remember. She opened up on the upper part of Maine, and then she moved down to that big, gorgeous store at the end of the block. Anyway, I got her booth, and I used to go and admire her stores, and she said to me one time, Joni, you have to open your own store. It'll change your mindset.
Good evening. My name is Gary Weltner, and I am a lifelong friend almost of Joan Eve. My history with Ellicott City goes back quite a few years. Back in the 1960s, my parents used to come to Ellicott City on Sunday and they would go to Leidig's Bakeries, as Len Sherry mentioned earlier. And I could hardly wait to get that powdered donut that was filled with Bavarian cream and walk down Main Street with powdered sugar all over the front of me. But I didn't care. You know, it was worth the trip. So in 1972, the year of Agnes, just before the flood, I had befriended some antique dealers on, actually they weren't on Main Street, they were up by where, what is it, Machatan and La Palapa. It was a small building, an outbuilding at the back. And as I say, it's an elderly couple. They had probably retired and saved everything, and they were now in business. And when the flood hit, I remember going to their store and helping them dig out the mud and ironically wash some of the things in the very river that had flooded their building. So in 1976, a very fond memory was the Bicentennial Parade, and I climbed up on those large boulders. I think they're near, what is it, Ellicott City Country Store? Yeah, and I remember watching the parade from that perspective. So flash forward to about 20-some years later. I had gone and I was living abroad for 15 years. And when I came back, I had met a very fine woman who was opening a business. Her name was Susan Starr, a common friend who actually is responsible for introducing me to Joan Eve. Now, how that happened was, apparently Joan Eve had spoken to Sue about opening her own shop. And one day I'm in Susan Starr's shop, helping her out, and this woman with wild, white, crazy hair comes storming in. And she's jumping, literally jumping up and down and screaming. And she said, I got it, I just signed my lease for my first store.
Okay, that store was so great because it was right next door to Sue Starr's store at the end of the street. It was 8018, and it was a very small store, and my landlords were Loretta and Tim Moran, wonderful people. They were great. I was there 12 and a half years, and I want to tell you all something. I don't know how I survived down there because people would walk down Main Street, get to the traffic light at the Phoenix, and where the Forget-Me-Not factory is across the street, and they'd cross and go back up. So I was thinking I was never getting all the traffic, the foot traffic that I really needed to survive. But people like Jenny, she made an arrow and said to Joan Eve's, and she put it on the street. But I loved being there. But then I had heard that the Crane Coin building, where Sam Coyne had his jewelry store, and it was huge, was going to be for rent. And I literally ran up there and I said, Sam, do you know if anybody's going to rent this building? He said, I don't think so. I said, can you just give me the landlords' names or whatever? And he gave me Mr. Whalen and Rusty and Jennifer Johnson. And I got in touch with them, and Mr. Whalen had to come down and interview me and find out if I was going to be okay for that location. It was really something. Anyway, I got that store. It was a little under 1,000 square feet. And I looked at it and I went to myself, I'm going to probably have to rent to other dealers. It's so big. How am I ever going to put stuff all in there? No problem. I had trouble finding a place for things after I was there.
Well, moving day came, actually, and so we needed to pack up some big chandeliers and boxes of Joan Eve's treasures. So I remember actually walking up the street near Joe with a chandelier about this tall, and I'm trying to balance it actually, but I arrived at the front of her new shop without losing a prism. So we've unpacked everything, and I remember it took us a good month, maybe 2 months at the most, and we completely redid the store. And one evening, just before the opening, I won't call it a grand opening, but the reopening of Joan Eve. Joan Eve closed the door. We were there late, by the way, and we were exhausted. And she closed the door and she locked it. And she stood there and she looked in the window of her new shop. said something that has stuck with me forever, and I think I'll let her say that.
Actually, I said, I can't believe this is mine. I mean, it was huge, and I was so proud, and I was in the middle of the block, not down at the end, you know, and everything. Anyway, I want to tell you a little about the store, and then, of course, you know what happened to that one. But it was a gathering place. It had 2 levels. So the second level, we had a wicker settee and 2 chairs and a coffee table. People came and hung out. It was like the best. And our friend Sue Starr had written her first book. She lived in Maine by now. She had a bed and breakfast, and the book was all about recipes for the bed and breakfast that she bought. So we had, on Midnight Madness, we had a book signing, and we had this poster. We had the book signing. She came, and we had one of our caterers bake all the little tiny muffins from her recipes, and people came, and it was wonderful. And we honored Sue. And today, we're honoring Sue right now because she passed away June 3rd. And, but she will always be in our hearts because she had Starry Night Antiques, and she was a starry person. She was great. Okay, so that's the end of the 2016 situation because you all know the flood came and wiped us out. Yeah, I guess that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, what happened next was there were a lot of news people here, a lot of people interviewing us, and all the questions, and the main question was, do you think it will be another business? I said, absolutely. They said this was a 1 in 1,000-year flood. So I found the front portion was for rent at Great Pains, where Len and Sherry Berkowitz owned the building, and they had their stained glass studio. And it was just perfect. Of course, it was down lower again, but oh well, we risked it because they said it was 1 in 1,000 years. So the best thing I have to tell you was the ribbon cutting. You can't imagine how it made me feel that people who owned businesses in town actually left their businesses to come to the ribbon cutting. Plus, a friend of mine from way back, Senator Betty Cardin was there, Alan Kittleman, who was the executive council person, John Weinstein, who's our, I get confused, county council, whatever, and Bob Flanagan, who was the legislative representative. All these people came, and of course Pam Long, our famous photographer from Ellicott City, she's the best. She came and did all the videos, and honestly, that was so great, so great. And then what happened then? You know again.
Well, I have to say, you can probably never really experience the type of bond that I have with Joan Eve unless you have been through the situation that we both survived. I can say, and I'm assuming that some of you have seen some of the interviews we've done, but I can say that it truly was a near-death experience, and until you share that moment with someone, and you don't know if you're saving their life or they're saving yours, or if we're both in this together. So just as the water was rising in her very last store, there is a moment that was captured on our security cameras that really, I think, shows without words how I feel about my friend. There was a moment when I was asking Joan Eve to remove the boot that she was wearing for a stress fracture on her foot. And as she was struggling to get it off and trying to contain her panic, I remember thinking and looking at her as she was bending over and thinking to myself, I can't believe that this is happening again to her. She put her heart and her soul, every ounce of energy went into coming back. And this was not the first time coming back. This was the second time coming back. And just like Sally, she did not throw the towel in easily. She was determined. But you know, when you keep hearing, it's 1,000-year flood, I think, I must be 3,000 or 4,000 years old because they're happening so often, you know. But in any case, I will always cherish the memories of the Ellicott City family. And I say it with really strong passion from my heart, because there is such a thing as an extended family. And when you see people every day as you come into town and you greet them and you get your coffee at Bean Hollow or your sandwich, or you start to see these people and you get to know them. You actually, it's no longer just good morning. You actually ask them how they are and you listen to them when they tell you. And that's how you establish this bond, that goes just so far beyond just your genetic or your family that you can't choose. But in any case, I am so happy to know everyone here tonight and to see that you're still interested in keeping this town vibrant and alive. And I also understand that on Monday is, I believe, the official groundbreaking for the project. And I thought how fitting it is this evening to have this remembrance. So let me pass it back to Joan.
I'm just going to say one thing that I didn't say, and I want to mention it. My dear, dear friend, T. Garland over there, in 2016 was working in that bank building, and she was on the second floor, and she was barefooted. I didn't know this until she told me, but anyway, she called me and she said, "Jojo, I'm calling you because I don't think I'm ever going to live." She was literally trapped in that place. And thank God Sam Coyne came with his friend. He saved T, he saved Sally, am I right? He saved Sarah from the Obladi with her dog.
That's because you called him.
Yeah, but still, and your cats, thank you. Anyway, I just want to wish everyone here good health, a long and successful business if you're in business, and enjoying Ellicott City, because it's just going to keep coming back and be better and better all the time. And actually, there's a famous line Gary wants to tell you, and then we're going to stop.
All of the years working with Joan, she was so hospitable when people opened the door and came into her business. She always greeted them. But there was one thing I kept hearing over and over again, and it is a classic. And I think maybe she should say.
Somebody be leaving the store, and they hadn't bought anything. I said, "Excuse me." Nobody leaves my store empty-handed, and we give them out the pens. You all get them signed.
So we have pens for everyone. These are collector's items. Seriously, she has given pens.
We're going to start a website that says, "Where in the world are Joan Eve's pens?"
Yeah, they're all over the world.
Coming soon to a TikTok near you, right? You can have that one for free.
Now, there is one other thing that she always says when she hands out the pen. She always says, make sure you go to, you look on here, and you go to Google, and just type in Joan Eve Flood, and I think she's updated the pens. They say Joan Eve Flood, and she says you can watch the 11-minute video of our story. And it is, oh God.
Thank you, Joan and Gary. So, next up, Steve Schwarzman.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. You're welcome. You can even have more than one.
You can always use a pen.
In that case, we'll go to Rose Cohen next. Rose?
Sorry, Rose, it's been a while. I had to pull my notes together. Like you, I have also, except I don't have my pages numbered, so hopefully I'm going to drop that. Okay, here's my story. Just a few days before the 2016 flood, I was supporting my best friend Rachel by attending her divorce hearing at the courthouse. And after it was finalized, we decided that we wanted to go grab a coffee and a bite to eat, so we chose Bean Hollow. And we sat at the window bench, the famous bench, and found ourselves watching the activity on Main Street. never what they thought of what would change forever just a few days later on July 30th, 2016. As a Howard County Recreation and Parks employee, our department's emergency operations response duty was to transport the business owners and residents the following day down Main Street by gators. These missions would become the most humbling experiences of my lifetime. This would be the first time that so many would get a first-hand look at the devastation that had occurred. For me personally, not only the sights, but the very distinctive smells, the sounds of silence, and the sharing of tears and hugs will remain with me forever. One of the first transports that I made was to Lower Main Street, where I would find myself offering support to Gretchen of Bean Hollow. We actually walked away from our flooded business for a few minutes, sat on the curb line in front of the Phoenix, and we chatted. I learned of her passion for parks, and she was actually a park ranger in Alaska. Our chat turned to some tears, some laughter, and an immediate friendship that remains strong today. Over the next few days, my attention shifted towards this lady who owned that store with all the colorful glass ornaments, pottery, jewelry, artesian trinkets, etc. She was looking for answers, for assistance. I quickly found myself, being directed by my bosses, to give her whatever assistance and support she needed. I would soon know of Sally, and our relationship became one of the best discoveries, friendships that I could ask for. During the next few weeks of recovery, I met many more special people, friends, whose businesses on Lower Main had been devastated by the flood. From Barry and Nancy at the Forget-Me-Not Factory, to Kitty from Summer of Love, to Lauren and Steve at Southwest Connections, to my very close friends, Paul and Tony of George and Grace Cafe. Prior to the 16 flood, I would often visit the shops and restaurants on Main Street. I had selected tea on the Tiber for my wife's 40th birthday celebration. I celebrated a very special milestone birthday at Side Streets and an anniversary dinner at Portales, along with several numerous lunches, happy hours with friends at the Phoenix Emporium. Tiber Park, that little piece of land sitting there, was also part of my responsibility to supervise within park operations. Over the next year plus, I found out what actually makes EC strong and how resiliency brings a community together. I was honored to attend the return of such special events as Midnight Madness, Springfest, Mardi Gras on Main, and relished in the return of what seemed like some normalcy, only to see that same flood devastation return again in 2018. I retired from my county job in late June of 2018, so my last few weeks were again devoted to recovery efforts. One of my first gator transports after this flood was Pam Watkins, and together we captured a lot of the behind-the-scenes photos, especially those that we were able to take from the Tiber River banks. After retirement, I was able to continue supporting in the recovery efforts as a volunteer, especially providing assistance with Sally's discovery business, cleaning, and location moves, as well as with her apartment, which she resided in above Discoveries.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome, Sally. As Gretchen of Bean Hollow had made that difficult decision to not reopen, and although it may have pained me greatly, laugh again, the plain words, I totally understand her reasoning. But I sure do miss a cup of her amazing coffee, awesome salads, and most importantly, her smile and welcoming hug. As the Phoenix was rising to its new location on Upper Main, I was discovering how special of a person Sally is. And I'm so grateful and honored to call her one of my as friends. I will forever cherish the memories and friendships created through all the ups and downs. I'm not just referring to all the steps and countless trips up to Sally's apartment above the discoveries. And I do look forward to seeing how the Tiber River flows into our future.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, Rose Cohen.
Hi, I'm Rose Cohen. I have never worked on Main Street. I actually live in Oella, just across the river. I am a lover of nostalgia, a Howard County business owner with my husband for the past 17 years, and a resident of the region for over 4 decades, and a quilter. Rick and I specifically chose this community because we wanted to live somewhere that was beautiful, by running water, and in a community that's friendly, lively, creative, welcoming. Ellicott City fit the bill. What I never expected was to experience a community with such bravery and resilience and camaraderie, but I'm getting ahead of myself. One of my great loves is walking Main Street and being among the shop owners and other community members. I remember spending snow days sitting at a warm table by the big picture window in Phoenix and drinking wonderful beer with my burger and watching chilly drivers trying to make their way up Main Street in the snow. I would get lost in the colors and the smells of the clothing racks in the back of Discoveries. Do you remember that? And found many gifts among the pottery and the jewelry cases up front. When I tried my hand at stained glass, I got advice and encouragement and bought glass supplies from the Berkowitzes at great pains. And I was awestruck at the artwork decorating their windows. And I spent many hours over spicy hot tea with friends, people watching from my favorite seat in Bean Hollow, mentioned before, that beautiful old wooden bench at the front window. I'd read the latest napkin notes displayed on the walls and enjoyed the dark, rich smells coming when Gretchen would roast the beans for that week. These buildings and others in Ellicott City feel like old friends, creating welcoming spaces in town, reflecting our values as people living and working together, and in turn providing places for us to gather, explore, be creative, and get to know one another. They anchor our community and create places for us to feel safe, to learn about ourselves, where through the businesses inside we can directly support the economic growth of our community, build relationships, and support our neighbors. I was touched by the striking looks and majesty of these buildings as I frequented the businesses, and within their walls I unexpectedly received enormous lessons in community. In the midst of devastating tragedy and the shared loss of the recent floods, I was one of hundreds of people who worked side by side, who showed up unconditionally for each other, for our business owners, and for our community, to help salvage pieces of our lives. We got through these terrible events because of people. Resilient, courageous, tenacious people, pulling together to cherish and support and restore the community we built together. Regardless of how I or anyone feel about the removal of these buildings for the flood abatement plans, I will miss them, these old friends, these symbols of our lives we have pieced together so lovingly, and do not want them to fall silently into obscurity. I want to honor these buildings and the community created by their presence on Main Street by preserving their images and histories in the best way I know how, by creating artwork in their honor. When in college, I created a type of quilt called essence quilts, which goes beyond simply creating a visual image. Essence quilts capture the spirit of the subject of the quilt through the many creative decisions that the quilter makes, like fabric design, color selections, additions of buttons or lace or other embellishments, and many other decisions which work together to symbolize and convey the spirit, the soul, the essence of the subject. This artwork will honor and praise these buildings. And just like when we stood together, mud-covered and exhausted on Main Street, I want to collaborate on this quilt project with all of you through the stories and memories you have. Obviously a typo. Like when we retrieved and cleaned the fragments of our former lives to piece together what was next, I want us to gather the stories of these buildings and patch together a more full tale of this quilt. Around the edge of the quilt will be a wide border, which will contain written stories from people like you who think enough of these buildings to have come here this evening. In that border, I'll be writing selected quotes from you and from my interviews with the shop owners and building owners. Collectively, we will patch together and create a quilt capturing the essence of these buildings and the community they helped create. When finished, the quilt will hang in a public space to remind us of our experience in these old friends and the contributions they made. And perhaps the quilt will give others who never saw these buildings a sense of the presence, gifts, and love these buildings brought to our community. Thank you for your contributions this evening.
Thank you, Rose. Next up, I'll go to my cheat sheet with Vickie and George Goeller.
Well, 46 years ago, this October, I came into town to buy the Phoenix Emporium building. And it was an auction. And there was only three bidders. One, a small group of businessmen. Number two was Sam Kaplan and Dr. Taylor. And the third was myself. So Sam is standing there kicking Dr. Taylor. Bid one more time. He's going to drop out. And I'm the only bidder against him for 6 or 8 times. And Sam must have known something, because if Dr. Taylor bid one more time, the Phoenix Emporium was not going to be there, because I was out of money. The auctioneer said, "Well, where's your deposit at?" I said, "Well, I got it right in my pocket." He said, $10,000. So I'm counting out $10,000 worth of cash, and I come up with $9,999, a dollar short. So the auctioneer, Bruce Levine, and I were friends from Cooper Auctions. And Bruce says, "I'll loan you the dollar, George." So it's actually true that Sam kicking Dr. Taylor, he's going to go out, he's going to go out. And the Phoenix finally survived that one. But 46 years in town, it's sad to see the building go. It sat there from probably around 1840 to the end, around the beginning of the trains coming into town, greeting everybody, to the end of the trains. The beautiful wrought iron railings on the Federal Building. It's 2 buildings there. The Federal Building is the brick part, and the front of the building was built after the Civil War over top of the river. I just can't believe that the county took it down. But they do what they must do, and that's the end of my story of Ellicott City for the Phoenix for me. But I was there till 2000, in business from 78 to 2020, 2012?
2001.
2002, around 2002, and Mark Hemmis took over the business, and I remained the building owner till the very end when the county pushed both of us out on the street. So that's my story. I'll let Vickie tell the rest of it.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the Phoenix. In 1980, I took a job at Cocoa Lane. I didn't know very much about Main Street, and I had never been in the Phoenix. In 1985, some of my co-workers took me out for a birthday celebration, and the last stop was the Phoenix. The next morning, I was standing outside in the doorway at Cocoa Lane, and a gentleman walked up in shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, carrying a briefcase, and he said, "We share a birthday." Well, we don't. We're 2 days apart, and that's how I met George Goeller. I went to work at the Phoenix in 1986, and we were married in 1988. And yes, George worked that morning. The Phoenix was busy all the time. We had ladies who lunched. We had tourists fighting for window tables. We had fans of the 100 imported beers that we had, dinner regulars, happy hour regulars. It was just a great place to gather. The Phoenix was open every day. It doesn't matter if it was a holiday or if it snowed. If it was a snow day, George and I would get up early, shovel ourselves out, and get down to the Phoenix. And we would start prepping and setting up, and the phone would ring. There would be an employee who said, "I can't get out of my driveway, I can't come to work." Well, no problem. George had an old Army Jeep that he had purchased at auction, and it went through anything. So I would say, "Get your uniform on." George would be there shortly. And no employee ever called out on a snow day twice because they didn't want to go through again. We had lots of parties at the Phoenix, open every holiday. We had anniversary parties, St. Patrick's Day parties, anniversary, Christmas, New Year's Eve, and we had Jimmy Buffett parties, and they were epic. So successful that even Meriwether Post wanted in on our parties. We had a great relationship with the other restaurant owners in town. Although there was competition, it really didn't affect any of us. We all worked together, and each business had its own customer and vibes. And we would drink and eat in each other's establishments. It was a very nice relationship. One of the things that we did to help each other, the health department would do inspections in town, all of the restaurants and bars on the same day, and they would be a surprise inspection. So whatever restaurant was the first to get an inspection would immediately go to the phone and call the next restaurant down the street. And that would carry on until everyone in town knew that the health inspector was in town. So it was not really a big surprise.
No, it wasn't, thanks.
A surprise for the first person.
Yeah, it was the first person was always surprised. On November 9th, 1999, a terrible 6-alarm fire tore through lower Main Street. Luckily, the Phoenix was not affected. But for the next several days, we had families and loved ones of the people who had been affected by the fire calling the Phoenix every day to get information and news about their family members. Every electric outlet in the Phoenix had a cell phone charging on it. people who were unable to get into their apartments. And on 9/11, the phone started ringing early. People wanted to know if we would open early and turn the TVs on, and we did. People came and went all day long. The town just wanted to be together. I just have a couple things left to say. George loved those buildings. He knew every part of those buildings. He lived upstairs in the early years, and the loss of the buildings is a big loss to both of us. I guess in closing, I'd like to mention some of our neighbors over the years. Mr. Ray Doran at Ray's Villa Market, Sally Tennant at Discoveries, Grinders, Michael Lentz at Riverside Roastery, Gretchen Shuey at Bead Hollow, the gorgeous ladies of Herrick Garage, and Len and Sherry at Great Pains. For a very long time, Lower Main Street was the heart of town. And finally, I want to acknowledge some of the owners, residents, and merchants on the corner of Main Street and Maryland Avenue. They include Bernard Fort, cabinet maker and undertaker, John U. O'Brien, who lived upstairs and operated O'Brien's Saloon, Walter Fissel, who owned Fissel's Confectionery with his brother Ferdinand, and his daughter Hattie and granddaughters Connie and Monty lived upstairs. The Balmas brothers, John, Paul, and George, who operated Balmas Brothers Maryland Restaurant, the Maryland Inn owners, which include Boyd and Patty Foster and her parents, Woodrow and Genevieve Givens, and Mark Hemmis. And many thanks to all of the friends, customers that we made over the years and that made the Phoenix more than just a saloon. The Phoenix lives now at the top of Main Street, at the top of the hill, but these 4 great buildings are now just a memory. Thanks for the memories.
Thank you, Vickie and George. Our final scheduled speaker, who's been mentioned a couple times this evening, Mark Hemmis, the owner of the Phoenix Emporium now in Upper Main. Like I said, Mark and I have a long history together, which we still laugh about, even though I think he wanted to kill me when I was 18 years old, but that list was kind of long and distinguished, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So in any event, without further ado, Mark Hemmis.
Hi. I didn't really know what this was today. Yeah, I just knew that this was going to be a room full of people who cared about the history of Ellicott City. This is going to be pretty concise, but it's going to ramble a little bit. I think you heard the pain in George's voice. That's as nice as you're going to see him when he's not feeling good. I don't know what I feel. I know that things change. Things change in Ellicott City. Steve was an 18-year-old, immature, idiot child. And I was a 26-year-old, immature, idiot general manager. Now I call Steve. Steve's the Maryland Maryland real estate agent of the year last year. He can give you some pretty good advice, and he's giving me some advice. Dealing with things. I bought the Phoenix in 2001 from George. But George Goeller created the Phoenix. George Goeller bought that at auction. Fortunately, I chose the name. I can't remember it. I tried to write it down. What was the other name? You almost called it something else. It was stupid. It was really stupid. What was it?
Buffalo chips.
Buffalo chips. You made the right choice. George created a legacy that was there. I was fortunate. I had a group of people I was supposed to go into business with. I was like, we wanted to buy a restaurant. We knew we didn't have any money. but we needed to buy a place that already had an existing business. And I said, some place like the Phoenix Emporium. And the timing was just magical, and it worked. And I got there. But George, in 1978, bought that at auction. They built the place up and built an unbelievable reputation, turned it into the landmark restaurant that it was on Lower Main Street. And Vickie came along and helped me through it for a while. And Vickie's working at the colored school, still, to guide people through town. Every Christmas, her and Ed Lilly, Sam's favorite little helper, they're the ones that put up the wreaths. They're the ones that put up the garland. They're the ones that do that. So still to this day, the Goellers are giving back to this community. Thank you. I came along, it was 2001, by the way. It was right after September 11th. Everybody told me I was an idiot. Don't buy a restaurant right now. Horrible time. Don't do it. It was the right time and I did it. I was 29. My son was 10 months old. 9 months later, we announced the birth of my second son on that glass window outside. They both graduated college last month. It's been a ride. I struggle with what happened. I'm talking to as a room of people who care about the history of Ellicott City. I was a tenant on Lower Main Street. I was told over and over and over again that my opinion about what happened on Lower Main Street didn't matter. We were called temporary squatters. We survived a smoking ban, which fundamentally changed our business. I know that's de rigueur now, but it fundamentally changed our business. We survived the financial crisis of 2008. We survived a train derailment that killed 2 local residents. The flood in 2011 that nobody remembers, except for the people on West Main Street. Countless other times our basements filled with water. The 2016, 2018 floods, and every time we came back from it. The Phoenix doesn't belong to me. The Phoenix belongs to Ellicott City. It belongs on Main Street. Temporary squatters. I'm the one that rebuilt it. Those words haunt me. I'm wearing a t-shirt right now. Underneath this, it says temporarily squatting since 1979. When we talk about the history of Ellicott City, we are talking about the people. We are talking about what Joan and Gary went through. We are talking about what Sally went through. We're talking about what we all went through as a community. It's been the honor of my life to serve this community. I couldn't imagine doing it anywhere else. When I bought the Phoenix in 2001, it was closed. Some floor damage. George had to redo the entire floor on the first floor. Buried it out, you could see the river. I got open the week before Thanksgiving. I had $800 left. That's it. We got through it in 2016, all of it washed away. All of it. And we had to rebuild. 2018, well, we're here for some history. I'll tell you this right now, a lot of people know. In fact, there's only a couple of us. Christian Baez, it's the son of my chef. Went into the floodwater to try to recover what he thought was a body. We presumed was Edison Herman's. He got stuck in that water, and then I tied a extension cord around my waist into that iron gate that was in the back and went in the water after him. We got him out. That part was fun. when we finally got through that day and the fire department finally came down and told us we could get out of there, my staff wouldn't leave. They went down the alley to get the children out of Tea on the Tiger. We had a big party there that day. This is the history of Ellicott City. This is what we need to remember, and this is what we need to honor. I miss that building with all of my heart. I do. But the Phoenix wasn't that building. The Phoenix is our community, and this community that has come together to rebuild and reimagine themselves over and over again. Yeah. Thank you. When Steve said he met Andy there, I can't tell you how many times we both heard this. Usually it's, I met my first one. God bless you for saying.
17, almost 18 years later. Yeah, it was right at the corner of the bar where the ATM lived and the cigarette machine used, just to give you an idea. Yeah, it was Golden Tea after a while too. Which was always funny because people would bang into us trying to play Golden Tea. So, on that note, I'd like to open the floor to anyone that would like to share some of their memories over the next 15 or so minutes that we have left in the program this evening. If you'd like to say something, please raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over to you. Don't everybody rush in at all at once. If not,
I'm
yes.
Connie Siegal, president of Historic Ellicott City, Inc. And as the group that preserves buildings and not being able to preserve these buildings and many other buildings that fall into, owners' hands who don't care and just think they should be disposed of. I think I certainly can go back to our organization and with the heartfelt statements of tonight, be able to tell them that it is the people. The buildings, yes, it's history. It's the time-honored things that have occurred in Ellicott City since the Ellicott's founding. But it is the people, and I think this has just been wonderful. I'm so happy to have heard it's over and over. All of you who have lost so much are able to say this. Then we who have to work to, preserve these buildings will recognize that. But we still want to preserve the buildings too. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening, sharing their stories and memories of Ellicott City. Clearly, this little place right here means a lot to everybody.
I just want to say something about this gentleman who's sitting next to me, Ron Peters. I don't know if you have any idea what he has done for Ellicott City. Ron, you should stand up. He actually put up the first set of cameras on the outside of the buildings because they wanted to see the vandalism, whoever was doing bad things. But because of those cameras, that's where the news people and everybody got all the footage. Ta-da! You can say
Let me just start from the beginning of Ellicott City. Okay, my grandfather, John Baker, I don't know how many of you knew John Baker. He owned about 50 properties in Ellicott City, from Fells Lane that the county bought from him when it was designated as the littlest slum in America. He owned Mulligan's Hill. He owned a building next to down where Barry and Nancy are. Down across Baltimore County, there was a stone house duplex, then the little brick ones before you got 9 Mile Hill, and stone one, and down on River Road. I don't know how many of you have ever cleaned out an outhouse, but he taught me how to clean one out. By digging a hole next to the outhouse. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, dig this hole 5 foot by 5 foot, 2 foot deep. And okay, now what do you want? Slide them boards up and break it out with a hoe. Put it down, it's good for 5 more years. So I had a lot of experiences, West End, and I ended up telling him one day, I'd like to buy a couple of these places. And about, 2 years later, when I think I was 21 at the time, he said, come on. I was up painting a car in the backyard. We had a little body shop. He said, come on. I said, where are we going? We're going down to Malloy's office. I'm selling you those 2 properties. didn't have enough money in the bank and this and stuff. I ended up owning the house on Marion Street and Frederick Road, which both were in both floods. And we had to gut the West End house. Lillian Shiflett lived there. She almost drowned in the 16 flood. She had to be rescued out at the South Rogers in Maine. And then Becky, right behind her, her car flooded out. She escaped the flood. So I spent a lot of time in Ellicott City with my grandfather from when I was about 6, taking me into Dee's kitchen. Don't buy anything over $1 because they'll charge sales tax. I had to buy my hamburger, my fries, and it would be under $1. You know, when they were tearing up Main Street back in probably '68, he owned Mulligan's Hill, but didn't have parking up there. So he paid the dump truck drivers who were hauling all of the debris off Main Street $1 a load to haul it up there and dump it. I was the guy with the digging bar and the shovel that spread the stuff out over the hill. If you go back there now, you'll still see these chunks of concrete there that I pushed over. And then I'd go play baseball at Wallace Park that night when I was 13. You know, but yet, you know, I learned to love Ellicott City. But when I really learned was after the 16 flood and started getting involved with helping people and cleaning out their properties. That's when I got to know everybody in Ellicott City. All these years I was here before, I had the properties, I came down, went to some of the restaurants, but after the 16 flood, and then the 18 flood, hey, we got better at cleaning up after doing the 18 flood. We knew what to do, the county was better. You know, we organized cleanup groups, two bunches, you know, so I worked on a lot of properties, all the way down to Joan Eve's, to Georgia Grace, to John Fisher's building. I always remember the basement of that building was huge. It was filled up 9 feet high with inventory from E.C. Pops. It was the worst job I ever did in my life, working a month helping him clean the basement out. Half a bucket at a time. We had the inmates helping. There's nobody else. We had people come into town the first weekend of cleaning up, volunteers. They thought it was fun. They never showed up again. And then we had inmates come down, and they worked, and they were great. I mean, they worked with John probably a month cleaning out, but I mean, it was nasty, smelly, and you'd run into a broken sewer pipe that you didn't know was there until a week after you were working with it. So, but.
We actually also developed the alert system for the flooding. And he went to Washington, to Ben Collins' office, to present his I'm telling you, the guy is amazing.
Yes, he is.
Well, yeah, that was just, you know, we had the cameras on the Howard House in '16, and yeah, we captured the 2 hours of flood on Main Street, but I thought, well, we're not seeing really most of the floodwaters. That's behind the buildings and under the street. So then we developed a network from West End all the way down to the river, where we had cameras networked together, and 1 week before the 18 flood, we finished, and we caught the whole flood on footage, all 12 cameras, 4 hours of footage. It's on YouTube. You can go find it now. They'll all populate, and you can see the whole flood, start to finish. So, but then I thought, well, I need to be contacted some way, notified. I can't be up in Reisterstown or down at my farm in Virginia, and the place is flooding. How am I going to know? I can't hear the siren going off. I don't think you can hear it go off if we were right in this building here now. I don't know. So then I said to my friend Pete Greer, I said, oh, I need some way to be notified. He said, well, we can use the camera, I think, but we got to be how to trigger. I said, okay, I'm going to go to Home Depot and get a sump pump switch and hang it out over the creek. And that's what I did, mounted it on a piece of angle iron. The one I put in 2018 is still hanging there today. And I tested it a couple weeks ago, and it's still working. And it will send a text message out to everybody who has the app on their phone. And it did. Memorial Day weekend, when we almost flooded then. The county has it at OEM. They use it to look at all the cameras. And when that goes off, that's what I still say is what they trigger the siren with. They won't admit it, but I'm telling you, and actually the 27th, they were supposed to set their siren off, and something happened. The siren didn't work. So they had a new vendor come into town last week and redid all the sirens. And so, but no, the little sump pump we have at 3 locations now, though. Court Avenue, West End, and behind John Fisher's old building. So it's, and that one went off the other week too. So they work, very simple, you know, but, you know, so we're constantly trying to improve that setup. But then, like Joan was saying, we use it for knucklehead stuff too.
people stealing stuff. Well, okay, let's track them. How'd they come into town? What car did they use? That kind of stuff. You know, a couple years ago, we had a guy who brought a girl in from Glen Burnie, 12 years old, took her back on the railroad tracks, took her out for 4 or 5 days, dropped her back off, and she remembered coming to Ellicott City. And I was contacted, can you find this car coming into Ellicott City? So we found it, and the guy ended up going to prison. So stuff like that is what it gets used for more than waiting for the next flood. So anyway, so that's kind of what I do.
Thanks, Ron. 6 degrees of separation in Ellicott City. I grew up in Mount Hebron, which was the big dairy farm, and the house that my parents still live in, that I grew up in, was built by Ron's uncles. H.J. was your uncle.
H.J., yeah, and Frank.
And Frank.
And my brother, Tennant.
And the gentleman who did the cameras is the father of my best friend. So it just kind of works out. It's a very, very small world here in Ellicott City, as we found out tonight, a little bit more smaller than we realized. So again, that being said, I'd like to thank you all very, very much on behalf of everyone that put this together this evening, everyone that showed up, everybody that spoke. This is huge, and this is going to be recorded forever, so that these memories stay in everybody's mind. So again, thank you all very much. Have a great evening, and I will see you down at the Phoenix for a drink.